1984 build here with custom HT leads. Before starting your custom HT leads, make sure you've gone to your vehicle and you've taken some string and measure the distances between the dizzy and the plugs themselves. When I trim the leads, I will always make sure to add an extra inch on. This just gives you a little bit more flexibility in the engine bay and allows for movement with the engine. When your leads are trimmed, you're going to want to get some electrical tape. Now, this part isn't essential if you are using the normal silicone style leads, but as you've seen, I've used the fabric ones. What I tend to do is run one piece of electrical tape around for the distributor end, because I'm using a 45-degree boot, and because I'm using straight boots for the spark plug end, I will actually end up running 3 sections of electrical tape. As you can see, this is the end where I will be placing the straight boot. So I'm placing 3 pieces of electrical tape on there. As I say, this isn't essential. If you're using your normal silicone sleeved cables, you can just go ahead and miss this section out, but it does make it a lot easier to push the boot on afterwards and stops any of the fabric bunching up. And there we are. That is the 2 ends all ready to make into a lead. Now here is the very important part. This is a very thin and small pin. You want to make sure that you're pushing it down halfway through the core, and then you'll want to fold it back over the core itself. You want to make sure that you've got as much contact as possible, and make sure it's seated down and pushed back and fits in nicely. So once that pin's in place, you will get your fitting for your spark plug end, and you want to make sure that back edge is running along that pin that you've put on. What I do now is I'll grab some needle nose pliers and I'll just slightly crimp the edges over. Reason for this, these tend to be posted to you fairly open, and you just want to make sure you're getting a little bit of a crimp on there to begin with. Make sure that it's really seated down and the contact is as tight as possible, because obviously this is where all of the power comes from for your vehicle. Now, once you're happy with the position of it, you want to get your crimping tool. I got this set from AccuSpark. You can get them from Amazon and other retailers as well. Now, you can see why I started to crimp with the needle nose pliers, and you want to basically make sure that the 2 edges are sitting properly in the crimping tool. And once it's crimped, you should get a really good pin down the back. You should get it seating really nicely. And make sure that you do that twice. So you'll want to do the lower end and the upper end. So here's the boot. Straight one's really easy. Just pop some WD-40 on. You don't have to put a huge amount on, especially with these straight boots. Just make sure there's a little bit so it slides over the electrical tape and the fitting a little bit easier. One thing I do notice though, when you have used the electrical tape, when you put the boot over, you will often have less chance to slide the boot back and forth. So I will always try and ensure that I've got the correct placement in the first try. And there we have it. That is the spark plug end of the lead complete. Now here is where it tends to be a little trickier. With the 45-degree boots, you want to make sure that you put these on before you put the fitting on. This is something that I've forgotten before, and it is nigh on impossible to get them over. So you'll want to push this through, and you'll only need, say, 1 inch, possibly 2 at the other end to come through. The pin is already in place on this one. You can do that before or after, it doesn't make any difference. So once you push it through and you are happy, you're again going to get another fitting. This is the dizzy end fitting. Again, make sure that you've got really strong contact on both sides, so on the top and on the back. We're going to crimp the edges in just slightly again with the needle nose pliers. Once you're happy with those, you're going to get your crimping tool and you're going to make sure it's seated properly. Squeeze that one on. You'll see in a second why I will always crimp both upper and lower on each fitting. Not only do you want to make sure that it's super secure and super strong, but if you only do the upper, you'll end up with a flared end such as this, and the boot just is never going to fit over that. So once you've done that, you are ready to go. Make sure it's crimped and tight, and then pull that boot over, and you've made your first lead. Some of you might need to do this 4 times, some of you 6, some of you 8. But it's definitely worthwhile, especially if you have a custom build, whether it's just for the aesthetic side of things or whether you just physically can't buy leads for your car. And this is my first time doing a proper video with sound, so I appreciate you being here.